Imagine a young man, Bakery, only 26 years old, full of dreams and ambitions, but with a plan darker than you could ever imagine. He marries Olivia, a wealthy 70-year-old woman, thinking he's found the perfect shortcut to a life of luxury. They sign an agreement, no divorce, no turning back. And Bakery thinks he's in control. But what he didn't expect was that Olivia will be strong and vibrant and would live on for years. Olivia outsmarting him at every turn. Now, Bakery is trapped in a life he never wanted, and is fighting all his best to come out of it. Stay tuned, for you won't believe what will happen next. Bakery was a man full of dreams but lacking the means to achieve them. At 26, his life in the bustling city of UK was anything but glamorous. He worked menial jobs to survive, always feeling like there was more out there for him, just out of reach. He often wandered through the wealthier parts of the city, eyeing the grand homes and imagining himself living in one. But those dreams always seemed far-fetched, until he heard about Olivia. Olivia was the talk of the town. At 70, she was a wealthy widow with fair skin that, despite her age, retained a youthful glow. Her late husband had left her with properties, businesses, and a fortune. Despite her riches, Olivia lived alone, without children or close family. Some said she was lonely and craved companionship, while others whispered that her sharp mind and energetic lifestyle kept her going. Bakery didn't care about the rumors. All he saw was an opportunity. Bakery's friends laughed when he mentioned the idea of pursuing Olivia. "She's old enough to be your grandmother," they joked. But Bakery's mind was set. He wasn't interested in love, just what Olivia could offer. His plan was simple: charm her, marry her, wait for her to pass away, and inherit everything. He made his move at one of the local charity events Olivia often attended. Dressed in his best clothes, Bakery approached her with confidence, his smooth talk and charming smile doing the rest. Olivia, though far older, seemed intrigued by his boldness. She had seen many men approach her over the years, but something about Bakery's youthful energy appealed to her. The weeks that followed saw Bakery and Olivia spending more time together. He flattered her endlessly, pretending to care about her stories of the past and complimenting her on her wisdom. Olivia, for her part, enjoyed the attention. She wasn't naive. She knew what people said about her and her fortune, but she also understood loneliness all too well. One evening, after a particularly charming dinner, Bakery made his move. He proposed, claiming his love for her was genuine, that age didn't matter, and that they could share a beautiful life together. Olivia was cautious, but something in her heart made her agree. They married in a small, quiet ceremony, with just a few witnesses. Afterward, they signed a legal agreement that there would be no divorce, no matter what happened. For better or for worse, they were bound as husband and wife for life. For Bakery, this was just the beginning. He believed that in a few short years Olivia would grow weak, and he would inherit her vast fortune. Little did he know, his plan was about to unravel in ways he could never have imagined. After their marriage, life for Bakery began to change dramatically. He moved into Olivia's grand mansion, a sprawling property that overlooked the city with its marble floors, high ceilings, and luxurious furnishings. To the outside world, he was now a man of means, living the life he had always dreamed of. But on the inside, he was waiting for Olivia to weaken, waiting for her health to decline so he could finally get what he believed was rightfully his. However, as the months passed, Bakery began to notice something unsettling. Olivia, instead of slowing down, seemed more energetic than ever. At 70, she was still attending meetings, overseeing her businesses, and even hosting social events. She showed no signs of the frailty Bakery had expected. In fact, it seemed like marriage had given her a new burst of life. Bakery's impatience grew. He had thought Olivia would age quickly, that the years would weigh her down and leave her bedridden, but she remained as sharp and active as the day they met. His frustration turned to anger. He had been counting the days, eagerly awaiting the moment he would finally take possession of everything, but Olivia's vitality was becoming a problem. In secret, Bakery began to plot a darker course. He couldn't afford to wait much longer. What if Olivia lived another decade? He wasn't willing to waste his youth on a plan that wasn't working out as fast as he had hoped. Poisoning her seemed like the perfect solution. He imagined it as a quick, undetectable way to rid himself of the obstacle standing between him and his dream life. He researched discreetly, looking for poisons that would mimic natural causes of death in the elderly. It seemed foolproof, until Olivia's sharp eyes and intuition caught on to his suspicious behavior. Without saying a word, she watched him closely, pretending to be none the wiser. What Bakery didn't realize was that Olivia had faced far more cunning adversaries in her life. She wasn't about to be fooled so easily. As the months turned into years, Bakery grew more desperate. Olivia, now well into her 70s, showed no signs of slowing down. She even seemed to grow healthier as time passed. Bakery was left in a state of quiet panic. He couldn't leave her. Divorce was off the table due to their legal agreement, and any attempt to poison her seemed too risky now that she was suspicious. He was trapped, and the life of luxury he had dreamed of was turning into a nightmare of his own making. Time was no longer on Bakery's side. 2 years had passed since his marriage to Olivia, and instead of the frail, elderly woman he had expected to live with, she remained as strong and full of life as ever. At 72, Olivia was still active, frequently traveling to oversee her businesses, meeting friends, and even going on hikes for her health. Her fair skin still radiated under the sun, and she seemed almost ageless in her grace. Bakery, on the other hand, felt like he was suffocating. Living in Olivia's mansion, surrounded by luxury that wasn't truly his, weighed heavily on him. The sight of her smiling, strong and vibrant, was like a constant reminder that his plan had failed. Every time she laughed or hosted a grand party at their home, it stung. His dark brown skin, once glowing with confidence, now seemed to reflect the frustration boiling within him. He avoided Olivia as much as he could, using excuses about work or personal projects to keep his distance. But Olivia wasn't blind. Her sharp intuition had picked up on Bakery's growing restlessness long ago. She noticed how he no longer looked at her with the same fake adoration he once displayed. His charm had worn thin, and in its place was impatience. She had confronted many adversaries in her life, both in business and in her personal dealings, and she could read people easily. Bakery, in her mind, was no different from the cutthroat businessmen she had outsmarted in the corporate world. To test him, Olivia began subtle mind games. She would accidentally leave documents regarding her properties lying around the house, tempting him to snoop. She'd speak about her health, dropping hints that she was feeling a bit weaker lately, only to bounce back stronger than ever a few days later. Each time Bakery bit the bait, hoping that perhaps this was it, that Olivia was finally going to grow frail and leave her wealth in his hands, but it never came to pass. Frustrated and paranoid, Bakery started making small mistakes. One day, while Olivia was out of town for business, he secretly contacted a lawyer to explore options for amending the ironclad marriage agreement they had signed. The lawyer laughed in his face, reminding him that the terms were set in stone: no divorce, no escape. Bakery left the office even more desperate than before. The pressure became unbearable. Every morning, he looked at Olivia, waiting for signs of aging that just didn't appear. She was in better shape than many people half her age, and Bakery realized he had grossly underestimated her strength. She wasn't the weak old woman he had thought her to be. In fact, she was stronger than him in every way. As he lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling of their grand bedroom, Bakery's mind raced with thoughts. Poisoning her had been his original plan, but Olivia's increasing suspicion made him hesitant. He couldn't act rashly, not with her watching him so closely. He was trapped, caught in a web of his own making with no way out. The life of luxury he had dreamed of was slipping through his fingers, replaced by the reality of being bound to a woman who seemed invincible. Bakery's desperation grew darker as he realized that the very contract that was supposed to protect his path to wealth had now become his prison. The pressure of living with Olivia weighed on Bakery like a heavy cloak. It was suffocating. The mansion, once a symbol of the life he thought he had won, now felt more like a gilded cage. Bakery had reached his breaking point. He could no longer bear the sight of Olivia's fair-skinned glow or the sound of her lively laughter echoing through the halls. He had to escape. But the legal agreement they had signed, the very thing that ensured he couldn't divorce her, kept him shackled. Bakery knew that if he couldn't get rid of Olivia by foul play, he needed to disappear. He fantasized about fleeing to another country, starting fresh, and building a new life far from the web of lies and deceit he had spun. But every time he considered it, the consequences loomed large. Olivia was wealthy and well-connected, with resources that could easily track him down. More importantly, leaving would mean abandoning everything: the money, the properties, the power he had sought. Despite the risk, Bakery began making quiet preparations for his escape. He started withdrawing small amounts of money from their joint accounts, being careful not to raise suspicion. He found a lawyer willing to help him set up secret bank accounts under a fake name. He even went so far as to look at flights to distant countries, planning his getaway meticulously. But Olivia was one step ahead of him. She had noticed the subtle changes in his behavior, the way he avoided her more frequently, the quick glances he shot at her during dinner, the way his phone calls became more hushed. And Olivia wasn't one to sit idly by. She began tightening her own grip, secretly altering her will, ensuring that Bakery would receive nothing should he disappear or act suspiciously. The final straw came one evening when Bakery, in a moment of weakness, tried to confront her about their agreement. He suggested ever so cautiously that perhaps they should rethink their marriage arrangement, claiming that it wasn't fair to either of them. Olivia's smile, warm and knowing, cut through his words like a knife. "Bakery," she said softly, her fair-skinned face glowing in the dim light, "we made a deal. You're a smart man, aren't you? Surely you knew what you were signing up for." The conversation left Bakery shaken. Olivia wasn't going to let him go. Not easily, at least. That night, he realized just how powerful Olivia truly was. She wasn't merely a wealthy widow. She was a master manipulator, capable of outplaying him at every turn. Bakery's plans to escape quickly unraveled. When he tried to withdraw more money, he found the accounts frozen. When he contacted his lawyer about his secret bank accounts, he was told that some legal complications had arisen. Olivia had closed off every possible route of escape, leaving him nowhere to run. He had tried to outsmart her, but Olivia had proven to be much more than he had bargained for. Now Bakery was trapped, not just by the contract but by the realization that Olivia had been watching him closely all along. He was powerless, stuck in a marriage that was slowly draining him, and there was no way out. As Bakery sat in their grand living room that night, watching Olivia from a distance as she laughed and sipped her tea, he felt the weight of his choices settle over him like a dark cloud. The life of luxury he had craved had turned into a living nightmare, one that he was not sure he could ever escape. Bakery sat in his room, consumed by frustration. The walls of Olivia's mansion, once symbols of opulence and power, now felt like the bars of a prison. There was no way out. He had tried everything: lawyers, secret bank accounts, even negotiating with Olivia, but all his attempts to break free had failed. She was too smart, too calculating. Bakery's bitterness had grown into something darker, more dangerous. The only way he could ever claim her fortune was if she died, and Olivia seemed far from the fragile old woman he had once imagined. But Bakery, in his desperation, began to think the unthinkable. He had heard stories, people with connections in the underworld, specialists who could make things look like an accident. It was risky, but Bakery felt cornered. Olivia was getting older, yes, but she showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, her energy and sharpness only seemed to increase with age. He couldn't wait for her to die naturally. His time was running out. Bakery made his first mistake by contacting a shady associate from his past, a man known only as Ghost, who had a reputation for making problems disappear. Ghost was dangerous, the type of person you didn't cross lightly, but Bakery was desperate. He arranged a secret meeting late one night in a rundown bar on the outskirts of town. As he sat across from Ghost, Bakery's heart pounded in his chest. He had never imagined that his greed would lead him down this dark path, but here he was, contemplating murder. Ghost listened quietly as Bakery explained his predicament, his face emotionless. When Bakery finished, the man leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You're playing a dangerous game," Ghost said, his voice low and menacing. "If this goes wrong, you'll lose everything, including your life." Bakery swallowed hard, but his desperation overpowered his fear. "I don't have a choice," he muttered. "She won't let me go, and I can't live like this anymore." Ghost nodded slowly and named his price, a staggering amount. It would cost nearly everything Bakery had saved so far, but he didn't care. He just wanted his freedom, and if Olivia was out of the picture, all her wealth would be his. A plan was set in motion, and Bakery felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Ghost had promised that it would look like an accident, something natural. A minor mishap during one of Olivia's trips, perhaps. She would be gone, and Bakery would finally be free. But as the plan unfolded, Bakery couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Olivia had always been too clever, too calculating. Could she have suspected his intentions all along? The thought gnawed at him, but it was too late to turn back now. Days turned into weeks, and Bakery waited anxiously for news. His every interaction with Olivia was tense, his nerves fraying with each passing day. He felt trapped in his own mind, paranoid and constantly on edge, waiting for the moment when his life would change forever, or unravel completely. One evening, as Bakery sat in the mansion, his phone buzzed with a message from Ghost. It was brief. "It's done." Bakery's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't believe it. After months of plotting and agonizing, the deed was finally finished. Ghost had carried out the plan while Olivia was on one of her routine business trips, far away from prying eyes. For a moment, Bakery felt a rush of relief. His mind raced with visions of his newfound freedom, the wealth, the power, the life he had always wanted. He could finally leave behind the charade, start a new life, maybe even build a real family like he had always secretly desired. But then something gnawed at him. Why hadn't he heard from anyone else? There were no calls from Olivia's lawyers, no news reports about an accident. It was quiet, too quiet. Bakery's anxiety surged. He decided to investigate, making calls to the places Olivia frequented. To his shock, Olivia was perfectly fine. In fact, she had returned home earlier than expected. That evening, she sat at the dinner table, smiling and as healthy as ever, her fair skin glowing with vitality. She greeted Bakery as though nothing had happened, offering him a warm, knowing smile. His blood ran cold. Had Ghost failed? Or worse, had Olivia outmaneuvered him once again? Bakery felt a growing sense of dread as Olivia chatted casually, seemingly oblivious to his inner turmoil. Every word she spoke felt like a veiled threat, every glance a reminder that she was always one step ahead. Later that night, Bakery received another message from Ghost. "You've been played." She knew. The words sent a chill down Bakery's spine. Olivia had known all along. She had anticipated his every move, had probably even manipulated Ghost into thinking the plan was still in place. The web of deceit he had spun had tangled him deeper than he could ever have imagined. Bakery's mind raced. What now? Olivia had trapped him once again, but this time she wasn't going to confront him directly. Instead, she was letting him stew in his own paranoia, watching as he unraveled from within. He couldn't escape her. The law, the marriage agreement, and now his own failed attempt to take her life. Everything had closed in around him. The reality of his situation began to sink in. He had underestimated Olivia in every possible way. Not only had she outsmarted him, but she had done so with the ease of someone playing a well-rehearsed game. Bakery was nothing more than a pawn in her hands, and now he was at her mercy. Days passed, and Bakery's life spiraled out of control. Olivia continued her daily routine as if nothing had happened, but Bakery knew better. Every moment spent in the mansion felt like a ticking time bomb. Olivia's presence, once something he could tolerate, now felt like a constant reminder of his failure. She wasn't just his wife, she was his captor. To make matters worse, Olivia tightened her control over him without saying a word. Financial accounts were further restricted. Properties that Bakery had thought would soon be his were suddenly sold off or transferred under new management. Even his personal freedom was being choked. Olivia began dictating where he could go, what he could do, and whom he could see. She was effectively locking him down without ever having to threaten him directly. But what disturbed Bakery most was the law. Olivia, ever the strategic mind, had found a way to legally bind him in ways he never anticipated. She had her lawyers draw up contracts that reinforced their marriage agreement. Not only was divorce impossible, but any attempt by Bakery to challenge the agreement would lead to severe financial penalties, effectively leaving him penniless. Bakery consulted a lawyer in secret, hoping for some loophole, but the lawyer's response was chilling. "You're trapped. The agreement is airtight. Any attempt to leave her or even go against her wishes could land you in serious legal trouble." Bakery's heart sank. He had walked into a prison, and the doors had been sealed shut behind him. Olivia's grip tightened further. She began orchestrating public appearances, dragging Bakery along to events where they would be seen as a happy couple. To the outside world, they were the epitome of success, a wealthy, glamorous older woman and her devoted younger husband. Bakery's dark brown skin, once glowing with ambition, now appeared dull and worn under the strain of pretending. He played his part, smiling when necessary, but inside he was dying. The worst part was that Olivia seemed to enjoy it. She relished in the power she held over him, dropping little comments that only he could understand, reminders that she knew everything, controlled everything. Bakery began to realize that the real punishment wasn't just losing his freedom or his chance at wealth. It was living with the knowledge that he had been beaten at his own game, trapped forever in a life he had built on lies. As he lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling of the mansion he once coveted, Bakery understood the full extent of his mistake. He had married Olivia for her properties, but now those same properties had become the chains that bound him. And Olivia, she was the warden, watching with amusement as he struggled against the inevitable. As the months passed, Bakery's once sharp features began to soften with the weight of regret. His face, once filled with youthful ambition, now carried the burden of a man trapped by his own choices. His dark brown skin, which had glowed with energy and life, now looked dull, etched with lines of worry. Every time he looked at Olivia, his fair-skinned wife, now 85 and still as energetic as she had been years ago, he felt a mix of anger and helplessness. How had he allowed himself to fall into this? Olivia, for her part, continued to thrive. She attended parties, hosted charity events, and managed her businesses with a fierce passion that left Bakery stunned. She was, by all accounts, invincible. Every time she moved gracefully through their luxurious mansion, Bakery felt like a ghost. His presence invisible, his future non-existent. He had banked on her weakening with age, but Olivia's vitality seemed unending. At times, he wondered if she had made a deal with the universe itself to remain strong, just to torment him. The psychological torment became unbearable. Every night, Bakery lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. His mind raced, replaying every mistake, every decision that had led him to this point. The memories of his past life, his freedom, his dreams, his ambitions, seemed like a cruel joke now. He had sacrificed everything for wealth, and in return, he had gained nothing but a gilded cage. Olivia, in contrast, continued to toy with him. She knew she held all the power, and she wielded it with grace, making sure to remind Bakery of his failure at every opportunity. "You were always ambitious, Bakery," she would say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But ambition without wisdom is a dangerous thing." Her words cut deep. He knew she was right. Bakery had been a fool, blinded by greed, and now he was paying the price. But what haunted him most was not just the loss of freedom or wealth. It was the realization that he had lost himself in the process. He had become a man he no longer recognized, consumed by bitterness, trapped by the consequences of his own decisions. Bakery began to consider the impossible: escape. He had been trapped in this marriage for nearly a decade, and every passing day felt like a slow death. But the reality was that Olivia had made sure there was no way out. Divorce was legally impossible, and every attempt to defy her would result in his ruin. But Bakery's desperation reached a point where he no longer cared about the consequences. He needed to break free, even if it meant starting over with nothing. He began to plot his escape quietly, carefully. He couldn't risk Olivia catching on, not this time. He had learned from his failed plot to poison her. She was always 10 steps ahead. But this plan wasn't about getting rid of her. It was about freeing himself. Bakery started siphoning small amounts of money from Olivia's accounts, trying not to raise any alarms. He knew it wasn't enough to start a new life, but it was something. He couldn't take much without drawing attention, so he was forced to move slowly. Meanwhile, he started reconnecting with old acquaintances, people who might be able to help him leave the country, to disappear. He couldn't risk staying in the same city, or even the same country, as Olivia. If she ever found out about his plans, she would use her connections to ruin him. He knew he needed to be far away, somewhere she couldn't reach him. But Bakery was playing a dangerous game. Olivia's eyes were everywhere. Despite his caution, she began to notice the subtle changes in his behavior. His secret phone calls, the way he avoided her more often, his increasing anxiety. Olivia wasn't one to confront situations immediately. She preferred to let things unfold, to watch as Bakery dug his own grave. One night, as Bakery sat in his study, staring at a plane ticket he had managed to secure, Olivia entered the room quietly. She moved like a predator, her eyes sharp, her lips curling into a knowing smile. "Planning a trip, my dear?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with threat. Bakery's heart raced. He was caught. There was no escape. Olivia approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're not going anywhere," she whispered. "Not without my permission." Bakery felt the walls closing in. She had once again anticipated his every move. He was completely under her control, and there was nothing he could do about it. Bakery's attempt to escape had failed, and with it, any hope he had left. Olivia's grip on his life tightened even further. She was no longer just toying with him. She was actively punishing him for trying to outmaneuver her. Every part of his life was now monitored. His finances were locked down. His phone calls were restricted, and even his movements were controlled. Bakery felt like a caged animal, desperate for freedom but with no means of escape. The years passed, and Bakery's resentment festered into something darker. He realized that he had made a mistake so grave, so irreversible, that there was no redemption. Marrying Olivia for her wealth had been a terrible miscalculation, but the real unforgivable mistake was thinking he could outsmart her. Olivia was not just a rich old woman. She was a force of nature, and Bakery had been foolish to think he could ever control her. Bakery's thoughts turned inward. He had no one to blame but himself. He had traded his freedom, his youth, and his future for a life of luxury that had turned into a nightmare. Now, in his mid-30s, Bakery was a broken man. He had no friends, no family, and no purpose. Olivia had made sure of that. One evening, as they sat across from each other at dinner, Olivia looked at him with a calm, almost pitying expression. "You could have had everything," she said, her voice soft but cutting. "But you chose the path of greed." Bakery didn't respond. He had nothing left to say. He knew that she was right. The mansion, the wealth, the lifestyle. It had all come at a price too steep for him to pay. He was trapped, not by Olivia's wealth, but by his own decisions. As Olivia stood to leave the table, she paused, turning to him one last time. "This life," she said, gesturing around the grand dining room, was never about the money, Bakery. It was about power. And now I have all of it. Bakery watched her walk away, her words echoing in his mind. He had underestimated her from the beginning. She had played the long game and she had won. Now he was left with nothing but the cold, harsh reality that his life would never be his own again. He had made a mistake so unforgivable that it had cost him everything.
Here are some moral lessons we can learn from the story. Greed can lead to self-destruction. Bakery's decision to marry Olivia was driven by greed for her wealth. His desire for material possessions overshadowed his judgment, leading him into a trap that ultimately destroyed his happiness. The pursuit of wealth, without integrity or love, often leads to emptiness and regret. Deception breeds consequences. Bakery's initial plan to deceive and manipulate Olivia backfired. His attempt to take advantage of her for financial gain resulted in him being entangled in a marriage he could neither escape nor control. This highlights that deceptive intentions, especially in relationships, often lead to unintended consequences that one may not be able to reverse. True power lies in wisdom, not wealth. Olivia's strength and control came from her wisdom, not just her wealth. She was always several steps ahead of Bakery, teaching him, and the audience, that true power in life often comes from experience, intelligence, and foresight, rather than material riches. Shortcuts to success can lead to ruin. Bakery wanted a shortcut to wealth by marrying an elderly, wealthy woman. However, in the process, he lost his freedom, happiness, and control over his own life. The story emphasizes that seeking shortcuts to success, instead of working hard and building an honest life, can lead to irreversible mistakes and profound regret. Be careful what you wish for. Bakery thought he would easily inherit Olivia's properties after her death, but he underestimated her strength and longevity. Sometimes, the things we desire most, when achieved through dishonest or unethical means, can turn out to be more burdensome than fulfilling. The value of integrity over material gain. In the end, Bakery's lack of integrity left him in a miserable position, despite his initial goal of wealth. This teaches that living a life based on ethical principles, honesty, and respect is far more valuable and rewarding than the pursuit of material gain at any cost. Regret is a heavy burden. Bakery's deep sense of regret highlights the importance of making thoughtful, ethical decisions. Poor choices driven by greed and manipulation can leave one living with regret, a burden that is hard to escape. The story demonstrates that actions rooted in selfishness can have long-term, negative impacts on one's life. Genuine relationships are built on love, not manipulation. Bakery's marriage to Olivia was not built on love but on manipulation and ulterior motives. As a result, the relationship was toxic, with both parties suffering in different ways. This underscores the importance of forming relationships based on mutual respect, love, and trust, rather than self-interest. Wisdom comes with age and experience. Olivia's character shows that with age often comes wisdom. Her ability to see through Bakery's schemes and maintain control over her life, despite her age, teaches that life experience and wisdom are powerful tools that should never be underestimated. Actions have long-lasting repercussions. Bakery's decisions early on in the story had long-lasting effects on his life. His actions led to him being trapped in a marriage that left him emotionally, mentally, and spiritually drained. This teaches that every action we take has repercussions, and we must be mindful of the choices we make because they can shape the rest of our lives. People are not always what they seem. Bakery underestimated Olivia because of her age, assuming she would grow weak and vulnerable. However, Olivia remained strong and in control, proving that appearances can be deceiving. The lesson here is to never judge someone's capabilities based on external factors like age or appearance. The price of freedom is too high when it's gained dishonestly. Bakery thought he could gain wealth and then easily walk away with his freedom, but his dishonest methods ultimately cost him everything, including his ability to live a free life. The lesson here is that freedom, when earned through dishonesty, often becomes a heavy burden rather than a reward. Here are some moral lessons we can learn from the story. Greed can lead to self-destruction. Bakery's decision to marry Olivia was driven by greed for her wealth. His desire for material possessions overshadowed his judgment, leading him into a trap that ultimately destroyed his happiness. The pursuit of wealth, without integrity or love, often leads to emptiness and regret. Deception breeds consequences. Bakery's initial plan to deceive and manipulate Olivia backfired. His attempt to take advantage of her for financial gain resulted in him being entangled in a marriage he could neither escape nor control. This highlights that deceptive intentions, especially in relationships, often lead to unintended consequences that one may not be able to reverse. True power lies in wisdom, not wealth. Olivia's strength and control came from her wisdom, not just her wealth. She was always several steps ahead of Bakery, teaching him, and the audience, that true power in life often comes from experience, intelligence, and foresight, rather than material riches. Shortcuts to success can lead to ruin. Bakery wanted a shortcut to wealth by marrying an elderly, wealthy woman. However, in the process, he lost his freedom, happiness, and control over his own life. The story emphasizes that seeking shortcuts to success, instead of working hard and building an honest life, can lead to irreversible mistakes and profound regret. Be careful what you wish for. Bakery thought he would easily inherit Olivia's properties after her death, but he underestimated her strength and longevity. Sometimes, the things we desire most, when achieved through dishonest or unethical means, can turn out to be more burdensome than fulfilling. The value of integrity over material gain. In the end, Bakery's lack of integrity left him in a miserable position, despite his initial goal of wealth. This teaches that living a life based on ethical principles, honesty, and respect is far more valuable and rewarding than the pursuit of material gain at any cost. Regret is a heavy burden. Bakery's deep sense of regret highlights the importance of making thoughtful, ethical decisions. Poor choices driven by greed and manipulation can leave one living with regret, a burden that is hard to escape. The story demonstrates that actions rooted in selfishness can have long-term, negative impacts on one's life. Genuine relationships are built on love, not manipulation. Bakery's marriage to Olivia was not built on love but on manipulation and ulterior motives. As a result, the relationship was toxic, with both parties suffering in different ways. This underscores the importance of forming relationships based on mutual respect, love, and trust, rather than self-interest. Wisdom comes with age and experience. Olivia's character shows that with age often comes wisdom. Her ability to see through Bakery's schemes and maintain control over her life, despite her age, teaches that life experience and wisdom are powerful tools that should never be underestimated. Actions have long-lasting repercussions. Bakery's decisions early on in the story had long-lasting effects on his life. His actions led to him being trapped in a marriage that left him emotionally, mentally, and spiritually drained. This teaches that every action we take has repercussions, and we must be mindful of the choices we make because they can shape the rest of our lives. People are not always what they seem. Bakery underestimated Olivia because of her age, assuming she would grow weak and vulnerable. However, Olivia remained strong and in control, proving that appearances can be deceiving. The lesson here is to never judge someone's capabilities based on external factors like age or appearance. The price of freedom is too high when it's gained dishonestly. Bakery thought he could gain wealth and then easily walk away with his freedom, but his dishonest methods ultimately cost him everything, including his ability to live a free life. The lesson here is that freedom, when earned through dishonesty, often becomes a heavy burden rather than a reward. If you did enjoy the story, then don't forget like, subscribe and hit on the notification bell to stay updated of our next upload. Also, we will love to see in the comment section where you are watching from.